A new survey out from Paychex on the state of small business showing flat job growth and slowing earnings growth. Joining us right now is John Gibson. He is the Paychex CEO. John, break this down for us. What you see is really important because it's what's coming from small businesses across the country. I think they've had a rougher time than a lot of big businesses because they can't adapt quite as quickly to some of the changes in policy that have come their way. It's certainly been reflected if you watch the Russell 2000 versus the other major averages. But what are you seeing at this point? How would you describe it?
Yeah, well, Becky, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great seeing you again. Look, I think despite the rapidly, changing news cycle, as you said, boy, you turn on your program every day and it's something new. What we've seen in terms of small business labor market is a fundamentally healthy, stable, and resilient. I mean, small businesses have been resilient. They're making the best of it. You go back all through 25 and really the fourth quarter of 24, we've seen really no signs of deterioration. We've also not seen any signs of picking up to date. So there's no signs of recession in any of our macro data. When you look at the wage inflation area, that continues to cool. We just hit a 4-year low. And then when you look at our 3-month rolling average, that's the lowest we've seen since 2020. So it's a stable labor market. I tend to find right now small businesses are a little frozen. They're not making any big decisions either way. They're not hiring and they're not laying off at the same time.
Look, the wage growth, not great news for employees, but maybe good news overall from the inflationary perspective. If that wage growth is slowing, that signals that you're not going to see the same sort of inflationary pressures we've seen to this point.
You're absolutely right, Becky. I think that wages are not going to be adding to the Fed's concerns relative to inflation as they're balancing all the other trade impacts. But what I see is a very healthy job market. I mean, it's still a pretty healthy job market, but employers are not willing to pay the inflated wages they were back during the pandemic and post the pandemic. And we've seen a continued kind of gradual slide. And as I said, now this index has been below the 3% point for some time. And so that's what we see. We also don't see it in job switchers. So when we're looking at people that are going and getting a new job, we're not seeing the type of increases we were seeing just a year ago.
Let's talk about this from the industry sectors. Which ones are kind of leading the way in terms of job growth? Which ones are struggling a bit more?
Yeah, look, education and health services has continued to be a leader coming out of the pandemic for 12 months in a row, been really strong. Services in general have been strong in small business. Remember, about 80%, a little over 80% of small businesses are in the services area, so they're not directly impacted by tariffs. Certainly, there's supply chain inflation issues from tariffs, but generally, small businesses are in the services area. So education and health services and general services. Where we see the laggards really been leisure and hospitality. It's remained last among all of the sectors for the 4th straight month. And when you really go back in leisure and hospitality, it's been below, the index has been below 99 for the last 12 months. Its wage inflation is below 2%. So again, leisure and hospitality really the weakest, and the services areas tend to be the strongest.
What about construction?
Yeah, we saw a little bit of a drop in construction, and I'm watching this a little bit. Construction had been reasonably stable. Last month, we did see a dip, the first dip since March of 2021. And one of the things, Becky, that goes back to something I said earlier, is I sense that small businesses are not making any big decisions. And they're kind of waiting to see kind of how the tax situation comes through. You were just talking about that on your program. And they're trying to see how this tariff before they're putting shovels in the ground. So we did see a little bit of dip in construction. I want to see if that continues in the months ahead.